Hey there, friends. My name is Joe, I'm 52 years old, and I need to tell you a story that's been eating me alive for months now. Before we dive in, if you could hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, it would mean the world to me. And please, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I read every single one, and I'll do my best to say hello to everyone. Now, imagine this. You love someone so much that you literally give them a piece of yourself, your own organ, to save their life. You go through surgery, pain, recovery, all while watching them get better because of your sacrifice. And then, just when you think your love story is complete, they shatter your heart into a million pieces and walk away. That's my story. And as crazy as it sounds, I actually looked into whether I could get my kidney back. Let me take you back to where it all started. It was March 2019, and I was working as a project manager for a construction company in Denver. Life was good, but something was missing, until I met Sarah at a coffee shop downtown. She was sitting alone, reading a book about art history, her auburn hair catching the morning sunlight streaming through the window. I'm not usually the type to approach strangers, but something about her just drew me in. Maybe it was the way she'd smile slightly at whatever she was reading, or how she seemed so completely absorbed in her own world. "Excuse me," I said, my heart pounding. "Is that about Renaissance art?" I couldn't help but notice the cover. She looked up, and I swear, time stopped. Her eyes were this incredible shade of green, like emeralds, and when she smiled, it lit up the entire coffee shop. "Actually, it's about Baroque architecture," she said, and her voice had this musical quality that made me want to keep her talking forever. "Are you interested in art?" I wasn't, really. But I was interested in her. We ended up talking for 3 hours straight. I learned that Sarah was 46, a graphic designer who freelanced for various companies. She'd moved to Denver 2 years earlier from Chicago after her father passed away, looking for a fresh start. She loved hiking, had a rescue dog named Beethoven, and made the best lasagna in Colorado, or so she claimed. I'd love to test that claim, I told her as we exchanged numbers. That first dinner at her apartment was magical. She wasn't lying about the lasagna. But more than that, being with Sarah felt like coming home to a place I'd never been before. We talked about everything, our dreams, our fears, our past relationships that hadn't worked out. She told me about her ex-husband, Marcus, who'd left her for a younger woman after 12 years of marriage. "I thought I'd never trust again," she said, curling up next to me on her couch as Beethoven snored at our feet. "But with you, Joe, it feels different. It feels safe." Within 6 months, I was practically living at her place. Within a year, I'd moved in completely. We were inseparable. Sarah would pack me lunches with little notes inside. I'd surprise her with weekend trips to mountain cabins. We were that couple that other people either loved or found nauseating, finishing each other's sentences, holding hands in the grocery store, completely wrapped up in each other. Friends, I want you to understand something. I had never loved anyone the way I loved Sarah. I'd been married before, in my 30s, but that had been comfortable, predictable. This was fire. This was passion. This was the kind of love that makes you understand why people write songs and poems and stories. We got engaged on a hiking trail at Rocky Mountain National Park in October 2020. I'd carried the ring in my backpack for 3 miles, terrified I'd lose it or chicken out. But when we reached the summit and she turned to me with that radiant smile, windblown and beautiful, the words just poured out. "Sarah, you've made me believe in forever again," I said, dropping to one knee right there on the rocky overlook. "Will you marry me?" She said yes through happy tears, and we held each other as the sun set over the mountains, planning our future together. But even in our happiest moments, there were signs I chose to ignore. Little things that, looking back now, should have been red flags waving frantically in front of my face. Sarah was particular about certain things. She didn't like when I hung out with my buddies from work. At first, it seemed sweet, like she just wanted to spend time with me. "Don't you think it's weird that Mike is always texting you?" she'd say about my best friend. "Married men shouldn't be going out to bars so much." She had a way of making me feel guilty about things I'd never thought twice about before. When my sister called, Sarah would get this look on her face, not angry exactly, but disappointed. "Your family is so demanding," she'd say. "They don't respect our relationship." I started seeing my friends less. I called my family less. I told myself it was natural. When you're in love, you want to spend all your time with that person, right? But the biggest red flag was how Sarah talked about her ex-husband, Marcus. Even 2 years after their divorce, his name came up constantly. She'd compare me to him, favorably, usually, but the comparisons were always there. Marcus never would have remembered my birthday like you did, or, at least you don't leave your socks on the floor like Marcus. I should have realized then that Marcus wasn't really gone from her life. He was like a ghost haunting our relationship, an invisible third person in our bed. Still, I convinced myself that these were minor issues. Every relationship has challenges, right? What we had was special, worth fighting for. And when Sarah smiled at me, when she curled up in my arms and whispered that she loved me, all my doubts would melt away. We set our wedding date for June 2021. Sarah threw herself into planning with an intensity that was both admirable and slightly frightening. She had Pinterest boards for everything: flowers, dresses, centerpieces, color schemes. Our kitchen table was constantly covered with wedding magazines and vendor brochures. "I want everything to be perfect," she'd say, and I loved seeing her so excited and happy. But then, in February 2021, 4 months before our wedding, everything changed. It started with Sarah being tired all the time. At first, we joked about it. "Wedding planning is exhausting," she'd laugh, but I could see the concern in her eyes. She was sleeping 10, 11 hours a night and still waking up drained. Then came the swelling. Her ankles, her hands, her face would puff up, especially in the mornings. She'd try to hide it with makeup and loose clothing, but I noticed. How could I not notice everything about the woman I loved? "Maybe you should see a doctor," I suggested gently. "It's just stress," she insisted. "Once the wedding is over, I'll be fine." But deep down, we both knew something was seriously wrong. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning in late February. Sarah woke up and couldn't catch her breath. She was sitting on the edge of our bed, gasping like she'd just run a marathon. "Hospital," I said, already reaching for my keys. Now. The emergency room was a blur of tests, worried faces, and medical jargon I didn't understand. They admitted Sarah immediately. I spent that first night in an uncomfortable chair next to her bed, holding her hand and trying not to let my fear show. Dr. Reynolds, Sarah's nephrologist, came in the next morning with test results. He was a kind man in his 60s with gentle eyes, but his expression was grave. "Sarah, Joe," he said, sitting down beside the bed. "I'm afraid the news isn't good. Sarah, your kidneys are failing. You have end-stage renal disease, most likely caused by an autoimmune condition called lupus nephritis." The words hit me like a physical blow. Sarah squeezed my hand so tightly I thought she might break my fingers. "What does that mean?" she whispered. "It means you need dialysis immediately to survive, and ultimately, you'll need a kidney transplant," Dr. Reynolds explained. "Without intervention, this condition is fatal." The next few weeks were a nightmare. Sarah started dialysis 3 times a week, 4 hours each session. I'd drive her to the center, sit with her when I could, and watch the life drain out of her a little more each day. The vibrant, energetic woman I'd fallen in love with became a shadow of herself. We had to postpone the wedding. Sarah was devastated, and honestly, so was I. But I tried to stay strong for both of us. "We'll get through this," I told her every day. "Whatever it takes, we'll get through this." The transplant list was daunting. Dr. Reynolds explained that the wait for a deceased donor kidney could be 3 to 5 years, maybe longer depending on her blood type and other factors. Sarah was type O, universal donor, but also the hardest type to match for receiving organs. "What about a living donor?" I asked. "Could someone donate a kidney while they're alive?" "Yes," Dr. Reynolds said. "Living donor transplants are actually ideal. Better outcomes, shorter wait times. But finding a compatible living donor is challenging." I didn't hesitate for even a second. "Test me," I said. The testing process to become a living kidney donor is incredibly thorough, and for good reason. Over the next several weeks, I underwent every medical test imaginable: blood work, urine tests, chest x-rays, CT scans, psychological evaluations, meetings with social workers. Sarah tried to talk me out of it at first. "Joe, I can't ask you to do this," she said, tears streaming down her face. "What if something goes wrong? What if you need that kidney someday?" "You're not asking," I told her, taking her hands in mine. "I'm offering. Sarah, I love you more than life itself. If I can give you a piece of me that will make you healthy again, how is that even a question?" The compatibility tests came back perfect. We were an ideal match: blood type, tissue matching, the works. Dr. Reynolds said he rarely saw such perfect compatibility between unrelated donors. "It's like you were made for each other," he smiled, and Sarah and I looked at each other with wonder. It felt like destiny, like the universe was confirming that we belonged together. But here's what they don't tell you about being a living organ donor: the surgery isn't the hard part. The hard part is everything leading up to it. I had to take time off work, which my construction company wasn't thrilled about, especially with several big projects in progress. I had to have difficult conversations with my family about the risks. My sister Jennifer was particularly worried. "Joe, I understand you love her," she said during one of our phone calls. "But what if the marriage doesn't work out? You'll have given her your kidney and have nothing to show for it." "Jen, that's not how love works," I replied. "You don't love someone conditionally. You don't say, 'I'll save your life,' but only if you promise to love me forever." Looking back now, I wish I'd listened to Jennifer. But at the time, her words felt almost insulting. How could she suggest that Sarah and I wouldn't last? We were soulmates. We were perfectly matched in every way, literally, according to the medical tests. The surgery was scheduled for April 15, 2021. Sarah and I would have our operations simultaneously. They'd remove my kidney and transplant it into her within hours. The night before surgery, we lay in our hospital bed side by side. They'd arranged for us to share a room. Sarah was quiet, more thoughtful than usual. "Joe," she said softly, "I want you to know that whatever happens, this is the most incredible thing anyone has ever done for me. I will never, ever forget this gift you're giving me." "It's not a gift," I told her. "It's love. This is what love looks like." She cried then, and I reached across the space between our beds to hold her hand. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Anything. Promise me that after we get through this, we'll have the most beautiful life together. Promise me we'll appreciate every single day." "I promise," I said, and I meant it with every cell in my body. The morning of surgery, I was surprisingly calm. I'd made peace with my decision. This was bigger than just saving Sarah's life. This was about proving that true love still existed in the world. This was about being the kind of man who would literally give part of himself to save someone else. As they wheeled me into the operating room, the last thing I saw was Sarah being wheeled into the adjacent OR. She blew me a kiss, and I knew that everything was going to be perfect. The surgery went flawlessly. Dr. Reynolds later told us it was one of the smoothest transplant procedures he'd ever performed. My kidney started working immediately in Sarah's body, filtering her blood and giving her back the life that had been slowly draining away. Recovery was tough, I won't lie. The first few days were a haze of pain medication and worried nurses checking on us constantly. But watching Sarah's color return, seeing her energy come back day by day, made every moment of discomfort worth it. 3 weeks after surgery, Sarah hugged me and said, "I feel human again. Joe, you gave me my life back." We were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at our church. Sarah looked radiant in her wedding dress, healthy, glowing, alive. When we said our vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. "You are literally a part of me now," Sarah said through happy tears. "My heart and your kidney, beating together, keeping me alive. We are connected in the deepest way possible. I thought we'd beaten the odds. I thought we'd proven that love really could conquer anything. I thought we were going to live happily ever after. I was so wrong." For the first year after the transplant, life was everything we dreamed it would be. Sarah thrived with her new kidney, my kidney. She had energy she hadn't felt in years. We took that honeymoon we'd postponed, hiking through national parks and exploring new cities. She went back to freelance work with renewed passion. But sometime in late 2022, about a year and a half after our wedding, things started to change in ways so subtle I almost didn't notice them at first. Sarah became distant. Not all the time, she'd still have moments where she was her old affectionate self, but there were increasingly long periods where she seemed lost in thought, distracted, somewhere else entirely. "Is everything okay?" I'd ask when I'd catch her staring out the window with that faraway look. "Of course," she'd say, snapping back to the present. "Just thinking about work stuff." But I knew it wasn't work stuff. The way she looked at me sometimes, it was like she was seeing a stranger. Like she was surprised to find me in her life. Then there were the phone calls. Sarah had always been social, but she started taking calls in the other room, speaking in hushed tones. When I'd ask who it was, she'd give vague answers, "Oh, just my friend Lisa," or "one of my clients." The intimacy between us began to fade too. We went from being the couple who couldn't keep their hands off each other to roommates who shared a bed. Sarah always had an excuse. She was tired, her medication was affecting her mood, she was stressed about work. Maybe you should talk to Dr. Reynolds, I suggested. Sometimes transplant patients go through emotional adjustments. I'm fine, Joe, she'd say, but her tone was sharp, defensive. Not everything is about the transplant. But that's where she was wrong. Everything was about the transplant. It had saved her life, but it had also changed the fundamental dynamic of our relationship. I started to realize that Sarah felt indebted to me in a way that was becoming toxic for both of us. The first major fight happened in March 2023, almost exactly 2 years after her diagnosis. I'd found a credit card statement showing charges I didn't recognize, expensive dinners, shopping trips, things we definitely couldn't afford on our combined income. Sarah, we need to talk about this, I said, showing her the statement. She looked at it for a long moment, and then something in her expression hardened. I deserve to enjoy my life, Joe. I almost died. I think I've earned the right to spend some money. Of course you deserve to enjoy your life, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. But we agreed on a budget. These charges are way over what we discussed. You know what, Joe, she said, and her voice was cold in a way I'd never heard before. I'm tired of having to justify every decision I make to you. I'm tired of feeling like I owe you something. You don't owe me anything, I said, confused and hurt. I didn't give you my kidney so you'd owe me. I did it because I love you. Did you? She snapped. Or did you do it because you wanted to be the hero? Because you wanted to be the man who saved me? The accusation hit me like a slap. How can you say that? Because it's true, isn't it? You love being the guy who gave his wife his kidney. You love telling people about it. You love the way they look at you like you're some kind of saint. I was speechless. Yes, I was proud of what I'd done. Yes, it felt good when people admired the sacrifice I'd made. But at its core, my decision had been about love, about saving the woman I couldn't live without. Sarah, where is this coming from? She softened slightly, maybe realizing she'd gone too far. I'm sorry. I feel suffocated sometimes. Like I'm living in the shadow of your sacrifice. Like I can never be just Sarah, I'm always going to be the woman Joe saved. We tried counseling after that fight. Dr. Patricia Hoffman was a therapist who specialized in working with transplant patients and their families. She explained that what Sarah was feeling wasn't uncommon. Many organ recipients struggle with what we call survivor guilt and feelings of indebtedness that constrain relationships, she said during one of our sessions. Sarah, it's important that you process these feelings rather than pushing them down. But Sarah didn't want to process them. After 3 sessions, she announced she was done with counseling. This isn't helping, she said. I think we just need to work through this on our own. Except we weren't working through it. We were slowly drifting apart, like 2 people on separate ice floes floating away from each other. The final straw came in June 2023. I was doing laundry and found a receipt in Sarah's jeans pocket, dinner for 2 at an expensive steakhouse downtown. The date was from the previous week, a Tuesday when I'd been working late. When I confronted her about it, she didn't even try to deny it. It was just dinner with a friend, she said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. What friend? She hesitated for just a moment too long. Marcus. The name hit me like a physical blow. Marcus. Her ex-husband. The ghost who'd been haunting our relationship from the beginning. You had dinner with Marcus and didn't tell me? It wasn't a big deal, she said, but her voice was defensive. He's been going through a tough time. His new marriage is falling apart. He just needed someone to talk to. And that someone had to be you. His ex-wife. Joe, you're being ridiculous. We were together for 12 years. We can be friends. But I knew it wasn't friendship. I could see it in her eyes, hear it in her voice when she said his name. Marcus was back in her life, and I was losing her. The next few months were pure hell. Sarah became even more secretive, even more distant. She'd disappear for hours at a time, claiming she was running errands or meeting clients. She changed the password on her phone. She started working out again, buying new clothes, paying more attention to her appearance. All the classic signs were there, but I didn't want to see them. I couldn't accept that the woman I'd literally given a piece of myself to could be cheating on me. I think Sarah's having an affair, I finally told my friend Mike over beers one night in September. Jesus, Joe, he said, nearly choking on his drink. Are you sure? Pretty sure. She's been acting strange for months. She's seeing her ex-husband. She won't talk to me about anything real anymore. Mike was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me thinks I should confront her. Part of me is terrified to know the truth. Joe, you gave her your kidney, man. You saved her life. How could she do this to you? That was the question that kept me awake at night. How could someone betray the person who'd literally given them life? The answer came on October 12, 2023, a date that's burned into my memory forever. I'd left work early with a headache and came home to an empty house. Sarah's car was gone, which wasn't unusual, but something felt off. I went upstairs to get some aspirin from our bathroom medicine cabinet, and that's when I saw it, a piece of paper sticking out from under our bed. I almost didn't look, but something made me bend down and pick it up. It was a hotel receipt. The Marriott downtown. 2 nights earlier. Room for 2 guests. My hands were shaking as I sat down on the bed that Sarah and I shared, staring at this piece of paper that confirmed my worst fears. She'd been cheating on me. After everything we'd been through, after the sacrifice I'd made, she was having an affair. I don't know how long I sat there. Time seemed to stop. All I could think about was my kidney, my healthy, functioning kidney, inside Sarah's body, keeping her alive while she betrayed me in the worst possible way. When Sarah came home that evening, I was waiting for her in the kitchen, the hotel receipt on the table between us. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw it. Joe, I can explain. Explain what? I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Explain how you're sleeping with your ex-husband while married to the man who gave you his kidney. She sat down across from me, tears already starting. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're having an affair with Marcus. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her deciding whether to keep lying or finally tell the truth. Yes, she whispered. I'm sorry, Joe. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. How long? Since July, she admitted. It started as just talking, Joe. He was going through his divorce, and he reached out because he needed someone who understood him. And you understood him better than your own husband? That's not fair, she said, her tears flowing freely now. You don't understand what it's like, Joe. You don't understand the pressure I've been under since the transplant. The pressure of being alive. The pressure of being grateful every single day, she exploded. Do you know what it's like to wake up every morning knowing that you're only alive because someone else sacrificed for you? Do you know what it's like to look at your husband and see your savior instead of your partner? I stared at her, not knowing what to say. With Marcus, I can just be Sarah, she continued. I don't have to be the grateful kidney recipient. I don't have to perform gratitude every day. I can just be a woman, not a project. A project? The word came out like a croak. That's what I became, isn't it? Your project. Your good deed. The woman you saved. I saved you because I loved you, I said, my voice breaking. Not because I wanted a project. Maybe, she said. But that's what it became. And I can't live like that anymore, Joe. I can't be your grateful patient for the rest of my life. We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of her betrayal settling over us like a heavy blanket. What do you want, Sarah? I finally asked. She looked at me with those green eyes that had once made me believe in forever, and spoke the words that shattered my world completely. I want a divorce. The divorce process was brutal in ways I never could have imagined. It's one thing to end a marriage because you've grown apart or fallen out of love. It's another thing entirely when your spouse leaves you for their ex-husband 2 years after you've given them one of your organs. Sarah moved out the next week, taking half our furniture and most of my dignity with her. She went to stay with her sister while she figured things out, but I knew she was really just waiting a decent amount of time before moving in with Marcus. The worst part wasn't the loneliness or even the betrayal, it was the physical reminder that Sarah carried a part of me with her wherever she went. My kidney was functioning perfectly inside her body, keeping her alive so she could build a new life with another man. I became obsessed with that thought. Late at night, I'd lie in our empty bed and think about my kidney, filtering her blood, keeping her healthy, enabling her to laugh and love and live with someone else. That's when I started researching something that, in hindsight, sounds completely insane, whether I could get my kidney back. I know how that sounds. I know it makes me seem petty, vindictive, maybe even mentally unstable. But you have to understand, I was drowning in anger and grief and betrayal, and I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that the most intimate part of myself was inside the body of a woman who had just destroyed my life. I spent hours on medical websites, reading about organ transplants, donor rights, and theoretical surgical procedures. I learned that technically, it would be medically possible to remove a transplanted kidney and return it to the original donor, though it had never been done before and would be incredibly risky for both parties. I contacted 3 different lawyers, asking about the legal implications of organ donation in divorce proceedings. Could I make a claim on the kidney as marital property? Could I argue that Sarah had obtained it under false pretenses if she was already emotionally involved with her ex-husband? All 3 lawyers looked at me like I was insane. "Mr. Sullivan," said Jennifer Martinez, the 3rd attorney I consulted, "I understand you're going through a difficult time, but organs are not property that can be reclaimed. Once donated, they belong to the recipient. There's no legal precedent for what you're suggesting. But what if she was already cheating when she received it?" I pressed. "What if the whole marriage was a fraud?" "It doesn't matter," she said gently but firmly. "The kidney was donated in good faith to save her life. Her subsequent actions, however painful, don't change the fact that you made a voluntary medical decision to help another human being." Logically, I knew she was right. But logic had very little to do with what I was feeling. The divorce proceedings dragged on for 6 months. Sarah's lawyer painted me as controlling and obsessive, while my lawyer tried to argue for a larger settlement based on the extraordinary circumstances of our marriage. In the end, we split our assets down the middle. Sarah got to keep Beethoven, which broke my heart almost as much as losing her did, and I was left with a half-empty house and a crushing sense of betrayal. During one of our final meetings with the mediator, Sarah looked across the table at me and said, "Joe, I know you hate me right now, but I want you to know that I will always be grateful for what you did. The kidney you gave me, it saved my life, and I will never forget that gift." "It wasn't a gift," I said quietly. "It was love. And you threw it away." She started crying then, and for a moment, I saw a flash of the woman I'd fallen in love with in that coffee shop 4 years earlier. But it was too late. The damage was done. The divorce was finalized in March 2024, almost exactly 3 years after Sarah's diagnosis. She married Marcus 6 months later. I know because a mutual friend told me, thinking I'd want to know. I didn't want to know. But I also couldn't stop thinking about it. The months after the divorce were the darkest period of my life. I fell into a depression so deep I could barely function. I'd go to work, come home, and sit in my empty house, surrounded by the ghosts of my failed marriage. I stopped seeing friends. I stopped calling my family. I stopped doing anything that didn't absolutely have to be done to survive. My sister Jennifer called me every few days, worried about my mental state. "Joe, you need to talk to someone," she said during one particularly difficult conversation. "You can't go on like this." "I'm fine," I lied. "You're not fine. You gave that woman your kidney, and she destroyed your life. You have every right to be angry, but you can't let it consume you." But that's exactly what was happening. The anger was consuming me, eating me alive from the inside out. I became obsessed with Sarah and Marcus, checking their social media constantly, driving by places I thought they might be, torturing myself with glimpses of their happiness. In one particularly low moment, I drove past the house where Marcus lived, hoping to catch sight of Sarah's car. It was there, parked in the driveway like she belonged there. Like she'd always belonged there instead of with me. That's when I realized I needed help. Dr. Michael Chen was a therapist who specialized in grief counseling. Our first session was awkward and painful, but he was patient and non-judgmental in a way I desperately needed. "Joe," he said during our 3rd meeting, "I want you to think about something. You keep referring to what you did as giving Sarah your kidney. But medically, spiritually, emotionally, that kidney doesn't belong to you anymore. It hasn't for 3 years. But it's my kidney," I insisted. "It came from my body." "Yes, but it became her kidney the moment the surgery was complete. It's keeping her alive, but it's not yours anymore. And your continued attachment to it is preventing you from moving forward." "How can I not be attached to it? It's literally a part of me inside her body." "I understand that feeling," Dr. Chen said. "But consider this, if you had donated blood and found out later that the recipient had committed a crime, would you feel responsible? Would you want the blood back? That's different. Is it, though? You made a medical decision to help save someone's life. Her subsequent choices don't invalidate the goodness of your decision." These sessions were brutal but necessary. Dr. Chen helped me understand that my obsession with the kidney was really about control. I felt powerless in the face of Sarah's betrayal, so I was fixating on the one thing that connected us, the one thing I felt should still be mine. But as he pointed out repeatedly, it wasn't mine anymore. It never would be again. Slowly, painfully, I started to work through my feelings. I joined a support group for divorced men, where I met other guys who'd been through similar betrayals, though admittedly none quite as unique as mine. I gave her everything, said Tom, a 48-year-old electrician whose wife had left him for her personal trainer. 22 years of marriage, 2 kids, a house, everything. And she threw it all away for some guy with abs. At least your everything wasn't literally inside her body, I replied, and the group went quiet. These men understood betrayal, but they couldn't quite grasp the specific horror of having your organ inside your ex-wife's body while she built a new life with someone else. Still, their support helped. We'd meet every Thursday night at a community center, 8 guys who'd had their hearts broken by women they trusted completely. We'd share our stories, our anger, our slow progress toward healing. You know what I realized, said Dave, a 52-year-old accountant whose wife had emptied their bank account and disappeared with her yoga instructor. We keep talking about what they took from us. But maybe we need to focus on what we gained. What did we gain? Asked Marcus. Yes, his name was Marcus too, which was just another cruel joke from the universe. We learned who they really were, Dave said. Better to know now than waste another 20 years with someone who wasn't worthy of our love. It was a nice sentiment, but I struggled to apply it to my situation. What had I gained from learning that Sarah wasn't worthy of my kidney? Recovery wasn't linear. There were good days and bad days, and sometimes the bad days would stretch into bad weeks. But gradually, with Dr. Chen's help and the support of my group, I started to rebuild my life. I went back to seeing my friends. Mike was incredibly patient with me, letting me vent about Sarah and the kidney situation for months before finally saying, "Joe, I love you like a brother, but if you don't stop talking about that kidney, I'm going to lose my mind." He was right. I'd become that guy, the one who could turn any conversation back to his problems, his betrayal, his kidney. I started dating again in late 2024, almost a year after the divorce was finalized. It felt strange at first, terrifying even. How do you explain to someone new that you gave your kidney to your ex-wife who then left you for her previous ex-husband? It's not exactly typical small talk. My first date was with Linda, a 49-year-old teacher I met through a mutual friend. She was kind, intelligent, and had no idea about my complicated medical history. We had dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant, and for 2 hours, I felt almost normal again. "So what ended your marriage?" she asked over dessert, the inevitable question that every divorced person faces on first dates. I'd practiced this answer with Dr. Chen, but actually saying it out loud to someone new was harder than I'd expected. "We grew apart after she had some serious health issues," I said, which was technically true if you left out about 90% of the story. Sometimes crisis brings people together, and sometimes it drives them apart. Linda nodded sympathetically. "That must have been really difficult for both of you. If only she knew." I went on a few more dates over the next several months, coffee with Susan, a movie with Rebecca, dinner with Carol. Each time, I found myself editing my story more and more, trying to find a version of events that didn't make me sound like either a saint or a victim. But I wasn't ready for a serious relationship. How could I be? Part of me was still married to Sarah, still connected to her through that kidney that was keeping her alive while she laughed and loved with Marcus. The breakthrough came during a therapy session in January 2025, almost a year after the divorce was finalized. Dr. Chen asked me a question that stopped me cold. "Joe, if you could go back and make the decision again, knowing everything you know now about how it would turn out, would you still donate your kidney to Sarah?" I opened my mouth to say, absolutely not, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I sat there in stunned silence, really thinking about the question for the first time. Would I still save her life, even knowing she would break my heart? I don't know, I admitted. "Why don't you know?" "Because." I struggled to find the words. "Because even though she hurt me, even though she betrayed me in the worst possible way, she's still alive. And maybe that matters more than my pain." Dr. Chen leaned forward. "Tell me more about that." "She's living her life, Dr. Chen. She's healthy and happy and in love. My kidney is working perfectly. She told me at the divorce proceedings that all her test results are great, that she's never felt better. And yes, it kills me that she's building that life with someone else, but she's building a life. She's not dead." For the first time in almost 2 years, I felt something other than anger and betrayal. I felt relief, peace. I couldn't quite name it, but something was shifting inside me. If she had died waiting for a kidney, I continued, working through the thought out loud, I would have regretted not getting tested for the rest of my life. I would have known that I could have saved her and chose not to. And how does that make you feel now? It makes me feel like maybe I did the right thing for the wrong reasons, or the right thing that had bad consequences, or I don't know. It's complicated. Most meaningful things are complicated, Joe. Over the next several weeks, I found myself thinking about that conversation constantly. I started to realize that my obsession with getting the kidney back wasn't really about the kidney at all, it was about wanting to undo the pain, to take back the vulnerability, to somehow protect myself from having loved someone so completely. But you can't take back love. You can't undo sacrifice. You can't retrieve the pieces of yourself that you've given to others, whether those pieces are emotional or literal. I called my sister Jennifer and told her about this revelation. "Joe, I'm so proud of you," she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. "When all this started, I was worried you were going to let bitterness destroy you. I almost did," I admitted. There were days when I thought about doing something really stupid, like trying to contact Sarah and demanding she give me my kidney back, or showing up at Marcus's house, or I don't know what. But you didn't. No, I didn't. I got help instead. And I'm starting to understand that what I did, donating the kidney, was actually one of the best things I've ever done, even if the marriage didn't work out. What do you mean? I mean I saved someone's life, Jen. Whatever else happened, whatever pain came afterward, I saved someone's life. Sarah is walking around today, living and breathing and being human, because I made a choice to help her. That's not nothing. That's actually pretty amazing. Life has a way of testing your growth just when you think you've figured things out. In March 2025, exactly 4 years after Sarah's diagnosis, I ran into her at the grocery store. I was picking up milk and eggs for dinner when I turned the corner into the produce section, and there she was, examining avocados with the same careful attention she'd always given to selecting fruit. She looked healthy, vibrant, even. Her hair was longer than she'd worn it when we were married, and she was tan, like she'd been spending time outdoors. My first instinct was to duck down the next aisle before she saw me, but something made me stay. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was the months of therapy finally paying off, but I found myself walking toward her. "Sarah." She looked up, startled, and for a moment I saw fear flash across her face. Then she composed herself, gave me that polite smile she'd perfected during our divorce proceedings. "Hi, Joe. How are you?" "I'm good," I said, and was surprised to realize it was mostly true. "You look well." "Thank you. I feel well." She paused, and I could see her debating whether to say more. "The kidney is, everything is working perfectly. Dr. Reynolds says my test results are better than most people with original kidneys." There it was, the elephant in the room, or rather, the kidney in the room. "I'm glad," I said, and meant it. "That's what we wanted, right? For you to be healthy." She studied my face, looking for traces of the anger and bitterness that had defined our last few interactions. "Joe, I owe you an apology. A real one, not the legal speak nonsense from the divorce. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear this, but I also wasn't going to walk away. You don't owe me anything, Sarah." "Yes, I do. What I did to you was unforgivable. You saved my life, and I repaid you by having an affair and leaving you for my ex-husband. There's no excuse for that." We stood there in the produce section, two people who had once shared everything, dreams, a home, a kidney, now talking like polite strangers. "I was drowning, Joe," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "After the transplant, I felt like I wasn't a whole person anymore. I felt like I was just an extension of your goodness, your sacrifice. I couldn't figure out how to be Sarah, just Sarah, instead of the woman Joe saved." "So you went back to Marcus because he knew you before the transplant?" She nodded. "With him, I could pretend it never happened. I could pretend I was still the same person I'd been before I got sick. It was selfish and stupid and cruel to you, but I couldn't handle being a walking reminder of someone else's sacrifice. I thought about Dr. Chen's words about the kidney not belonging to me anymore, about organs not being property that could be reclaimed. Sarah, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "For a long time after our divorce, I was obsessed with the idea of getting my kidney back. I actually researched whether it was medically possible, whether I could sue you for it, all kinds of crazy things." Her eyes widened. "Joe, I had no idea Let me finish. I was so angry, so hurt, that I couldn't think straight. But I've been in therapy, and I've realized something important. That kidney doesn't belong to me anymore. It hasn't for 4 years. It's yours now, and it's keeping you alive, and that's exactly what it's supposed to do. Sarah started crying right there between the avocados and the organic lettuce. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said. Maybe not, I agreed. But I'm not forgiving you for your benefit. I'm forgiving you for mine. I can't carry this anger around anymore, Sarah. It was killing me slowly, and I've already given you one organ. I'm not going to let you have my peace of mind too. She laughed through her tears at that, a sound I hadn't heard in years. How are you and Marcus? I asked, surprising myself. We're okay. It's different than I thought it would be. Turns out you can't really go back to who you used to be. The woman who fell in love with Marcus the first time doesn't exist anymore. I'm different now, the transplant, the divorce, everything changed me. We're trying to figure out who we are together as the people we are now, not the people we were 15 years ago. I felt something I hadn't expected, sympathy for her. Sarah had spent so much time running from the person the transplant had made her that she'd forgotten how to just be. For what it's worth, I said, I think the person you became after the transplant, even with all the complications, is stronger than the person you were before you got sick. Why would you say that? Because the Sarah I fell in love with in that coffee shop was amazing, but she was also fragile in ways I didn't understand then. The Sarah standing here now has survived kidney failure, major surgery, a complicated marriage, a messy divorce, and starting over again. That takes strength. We talked for a few more minutes about practical things. She was doing well with her freelance work. I'd gotten a promotion at the construction company. Beethoven was getting old but still chasing squirrels. As we prepared to part ways, Sarah reached out and briefly touched my arm. Joe, I want you to know that every single day, I'm grateful for what you did. Not just the kidney, but the love behind it. Even though I couldn't handle being loved like that at the time, it was the most beautiful thing anyone has ever done for me. And someday, when you find someone who deserves that kind of love, she's going to be the luckiest woman in the world. Take care of yourself, Sarah, I said. And take care of my kidney. She smiled through fresh tears. I promise. Walking away from that conversation, I felt lighter than I had in years. It wasn't closure exactly. I don't think there's real closure when you've been through something so unique and complicated. But it was acceptance. Acceptance that love sometimes means letting go. Acceptance that doing the right thing doesn't guarantee the outcome you want. Acceptance that my kidney was exactly where it needed to be, keeping Sarah alive so she could figure out her own path. That evening, I called Dr. Chen and told him about the encounter. How do you feel? He asked. Free, I said without hesitation. For the first time since the divorce, I feel free. Free from what? Free from needing her to be grateful in the way I wanted her to be grateful. Free from needing the sacrifice to mean something specific. Free from thinking that loving someone gives you ownership over their choices. That's a significant breakthrough, Joe. I know. And I think I'm finally ready to really move forward with my life. Moving forward turned out to be more interesting than I'd expected. In May 2025, I started volunteering with the National Kidney Foundation, sharing my story with potential living donors who were considering donation for their loved ones. The first time I spoke to a group of about 15 people, I was nervous as hell. How do you tell people to consider organ donation when your own donation story ended in divorce? My name is Joe Sullivan, I began, and 3 years ago, I donated a kidney to my wife. A year and a half later, she filed for divorce and married her ex-husband. The room went dead silent. I could see people exchanging glances, probably wondering if this was supposed to be an inspirational talk or a cautionary tale. Now, you might think this is going to be a story about why you shouldn't donate organs to people you love. But it's not. It's actually a story about why love, real love, isn't conditional. I told them about Sarah's diagnosis, about the terror of watching someone you love slowly dying, about the decision to get tested as a donor. I talked about the surgery, the recovery, the joy of seeing Sarah healthy again. And then I talked about the divorce, the betrayal, the anger, and the long journey toward understanding that the value of what I'd done wasn't diminished by Sarah's subsequent choices. Here's what I learned, I told the group. When you donate an organ to someone, you're not buying their loyalty or their gratitude or their love. You're giving them the chance to live. What they do with that life, whether they use it to build a future with you or with someone else, that's their choice to make. But doesn't that make you feel used? Asked a woman whose husband needed a kidney. It made me feel used for a long time, I admitted. But that feeling was based on the false assumption that I owned something I didn't own. I thought because I gave Sarah my kidney, she owed me something in return. But organs aren't loans, they're gifts. And the best gifts are given without strings attached. After the presentation, a man named Robert approached me. His wife needed a kidney, and he'd been wrestling with the decision for months. "What if I donate and then something happens to our marriage?" he asked. "What if we get divorced for unrelated reasons? Will I regret it?" "Robert, let me ask you something. If your wife died tomorrow while you were still deciding whether to donate, how would you feel?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I'd never forgive myself." "Then you have your answer. The regret of not trying to save her life would be infinitely worse than any regret that might come from complications afterward." 6 months later, Robert sent me a photo of him and his wife hiking in Yosemite, both of them healthy and smiling. His kidney had been a perfect match, the surgery had gone smoothly, and they were stronger than ever. Not every story ends that way, but seeing Robert's success reminded me why I'd made the choice I did. Love means taking risks. Love means being vulnerable. Love means sometimes giving everything you have without knowing how the story will end. By the fall of 2025, I was in a completely different place emotionally than I'd been just a year earlier. I was dating Rebecca, a 48-year-old nurse I'd met through my volunteer work with the Kidney Foundation. She knew my whole story from our second date, the kidney, the betrayal, the divorce, all of it. "That must have been incredibly painful," she said when I finished telling her about Sarah. "It was. But it also taught me things about love and sacrifice that I never would have learned otherwise." "Like what?" "Like the fact that real love isn't about what you get back. It's about what you're willing to give, even when there are no guarantees." Rebecca and I took things slowly. After Sarah, I was gun-shy about rushing into anything serious. But Rebecca was patient, understanding, and brought her own perspective to our relationship as someone who'd worked in healthcare for 20 years. "You know what I admire most about what you did?" she asked me one evening as we walked through the park near my house. "What's that?" "You saved someone's life, and even after everything that happened, you'd do it again. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." She was right. Despite all the pain, all the betrayal, all the nights I'd lain awake wishing I could take it all back, I knew that if faced with the same situation again, I'd make the same choice. Not because I'm a saint or a hero, but because that's what love looks like when someone's life is on the line. In December 2025, almost 5 years after Sarah's diagnosis, I got an unexpected call from Dr. Reynolds. "Joe, I hope you don't mind me reaching out," he said. "I have some news I thought you'd want to hear. Sarah's 5-year post-transplant checkup shows absolutely perfect kidney function. The organ you donated is working better than we could have hoped." "That's wonderful news, Dr. Reynolds. Thank you for telling me. There's something else. Sarah asked me to let you know that she and Marcus are expecting a baby. She wanted you to know that your kidney is helping to sustain not just her life, but new life as well." I hung up the phone and sat quietly for a long time, processing this information. Sarah was going to be a mother. My kidney was going to help nourish a baby, Marcus's baby, but still, new life. Instead of the jealousy or bitterness I might have expected to feel, I felt something close to wonder. The kidney I'd given to save Sarah's life was now part of creating new life. In some strange, complicated way, I was connected to that baby too. I called Rebecca and told her the news. "How do you feel about it?" she asked. "Happy for her," I said, surprised by my own answer. "She's going to be a great mother. And that baby is going to have the healthiest kidneys in the world." Rebecca laughed. "You're an incredible man, Joe Sullivan. I'm just a guy who learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do is help someone else live their life, even if that life doesn't include you." Friends, as I wrap up this story, I want you to know that sharing it with you has been both difficult and healing. For a long time, I was embarrassed by how my kidney donation story ended. I felt like a fool for sacrificing so much for someone who could betray me so completely. But I've learned something important over the past few years. The value of what we do isn't determined by how other people respond to it. The worth of our love isn't measured by whether it's returned in the way we hope. I gave Sarah my kidney because she needed it to live, and I couldn't imagine a world without her in it. The fact that she chose to build her new life with someone else doesn't change the fact that I helped save that life. The fact that our marriage ended doesn't diminish the love that motivated my decision. If I could go back and talk to my younger self, standing in that hospital room deciding whether to get tested as a donor, I wouldn't try to talk him out of it. I'd tell him to prepare for heartbreak, to expect that love doesn't always work out the way you plan, but to make the choice anyway because some things are bigger than our own pain. Sarah is healthy, happy, and about to become a mother. My kidney is working perfectly inside her body, filtering her blood, keeping her alive, enabling her to create new life with the man she chose. And you know what? That's exactly what kidneys are supposed to do. I can't get my kidney back, medically, legally, or ethically. But I wouldn't want it back now anyway. It's doing exactly what it was meant to do, giving someone the chance to live fully. As for me, I'm building a new life too. Rebecca and I are talking about moving in together next year. I'm thinking about proposing, not because I need to prove anything about love or sacrifice, but because I've found someone who appreciates both my strengths and my scars. The kidney I gave Sarah taught me that love sometimes means letting go. But Rebecca is teaching me that love also sometimes means holding on, building something together, choosing each other every day. Both lessons are true. Both kinds of love matter. So to anyone out there facing a similar decision, whether it's organ donation or just deciding how much of yourself to give to someone else, I want you to know that the risk is worth it. Love is worth it. Saving someone's life is worth it, even if they don't love you back the way you hoped. Because here's the thing, we're all walking around with pieces of each other inside us anyway. Every person we've loved, every kindness we've shown, every sacrifice we've made, it all becomes part of the people we've touched. You can't take that back, and you shouldn't want to. My kidney will always be part of Sarah's story, and Sarah will always be part of mine. But neither of us is defined by what we've given or what we've lost. We're defined by what we choose to do next. And I choose to keep loving, keep risking, keep believing that the world is made better when people are willing to give pieces of themselves to help others live. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And definitely subscribe to the channel. I'll be sharing more stories about love, loss, and the complicated beauty of being human. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love connecting with people from all over the world, and I promise to say hello to everyone who shares their location. Most importantly, if you're facing a decision about how much of yourself to give to someone else, remember this: the love you give away is never really lost. It becomes part of who you are, and part of who they become. And sometimes, that's the most beautiful legacy we can leave. Until next time, friends. Take care of each other, and remember, we're all just walking each other home.